Greetings fellow Whovians and welcome to Timey Wimey Review. When asked what is your favourite classic Doctor Who story, quite a lot of Whovians quite Genesis of the Daleks, but there are at least another story that is out there celebrating its 40th anniversary this month, which is definitely worthy of being called the greatest story of all time in classic Doctor Who, and that is The Caves of Androzani, the Fifth Doctor's final story, which was originally broadcast on BBC One in March 1984. Now, just in case you don't know the plot, the Fifth Doctor and companion Peri arrive on the planet Androzani Minor to do what they do best, explore the galaxy. It's not too long though until they are embroiled into a world of gunrunners, ruthless military personnel, replica androids, a cave-dwelling psychopath with an unhealthy obsession for beauty and revenge, and a power-hungry tycoon who will stop at nothing to keep and gain more control. At the heart of this bitter feud, a substance known as Spectrox, which is used as an anti-aging chemical agent. Ironically, the Doctor and Peri stumble across raw Spectrox, which is a slow and agonizing poison. The Doctor must find a way to escape this planet to save his friend and himself from certain death. This story has a special trifecta which easily makes Caves of Androzani one of the firm classic Doctor Who favourites. Sublime writing by the legendary Robert Holmes, who script editor Eric Saywood had to fight tooth and nail with producer John Nathan Turner to bring back this classic Doctor Who writer. Excellent performances from the entire cast and a visionary director in the form of Graham Harper who really elevates the storytelling. I'm going to break down this review into those three elements, starting with the story. And this is unquestionably one of the most one of the most unapologetically mean-spirited stories I have ever seen in the history of Doctor Who. We've definitely had some dark moments in Doctor Who, both the classic and modern era. If we're thinking sort of modern era, I would say Parting of the Ways, when we had the moments on the bottom level of Satellite 5 with all the contestants from The Weakest Link getting slaughtered, and poor Linda with a Y with that moment with the Dalek shouting out "exterminate" from space. Obviously you can't hear it, but here we've got just dark moments everywhere. And I'm not talking about the lighting and the directing, that's later on in the review, but just how grim this story is. This is just so perfect for the Fifth Doctor. I felt that Robert Holmes wrote so perfectly for the Fifth Doctor. This is, like I said, the only one that he's had. I think the last story that Robert Holmes was involved with was the Power of Kroll in the Key to Time season, with the Fourth Doctor, of course. Let me know in the comments if I'm slightly wrong with my facts on that one. But yeah, the first crack at the Fifth Doctor, which is totally very, very different, polar opposites to the Fourth Doctor. This is a very young, energetic, youthful, and sometimes naive Doctor that we've grown to love with over his 3 seasons with Peter Davison. But yeah, he really put the Fifth Doctor through the ringer on this story. I would say Caves of Androzani was the last greatest story that Robert Holmes wrote. Obviously, he did come back the following season to write The Two Doctors, which was, on the whole good, but it did have its ups and downs. And then Robert Holmes did come back for the Key to Time season, the Trial of a Time Lord season with Colin Baker as the Sixth Doctor. And he wrote The Mysterious Planet, wasn't a Robert Holmes classic, but okay, and he would have been more involved in that season, but unfortunately passed away due to ill health. But here, this is full-on Robert Holmes, and if anything, probably one of the greatest. Again, let me know in the comments which one is your favourite Robert Holmes stories, or do you think this is the best Robert Holmes story? With this great writing, though, obviously you've got to have some fantastic actors to bring this to life, and boy, I'll talk about the guest stars for this one, because we got phenomenal performances by the bucket loads from all the guest stars. John Normington as the ruthless business tycoon Morgus. And yeah, really loved his performance in this one. I quite liked the misdirection that he apparently had, where he was talking to the camera directly. That wasn't supposed to have intentionally happened. He was supposed to sort of just spin away and have that sort of Shakespearean soliloquy of himself, talking about his inner monologues, but accidentally he just stares straight into the camera and starts revealing all of his inner thoughts and plans. But I quite liked it. I just think it just added to that experimental elements that Graham Harper, the director, was introducing in this story. Again, I'll get to Graham Harper later in this review. But John Normanton as Morgus was just like a really sort of on-edged, kind of 80s-ish villain in terms of the look of him, you know, with the long ponytail and slick back hair. But I just liked the sort of deadpan, really, and not in a cheesy deadpan way or a really bland monotone way. It just pitched it perfectly with the sort of deadpan speaking of, you know, and being just cold and calculating in his decisions, and how he became sort of, you know, this treacherous a-hole is the only way I could describe this character. Very slimy, but amazing performance, especially with his lack of sort of fake care when he pushes the president down the elevator shaft. I thought that was quite a good effect, actually, visual effect for Doctor Who standards as well. And the sort of like, oh, there's been a terrible accident, the president is dead, and someone has to assume control. I loved all that. You know, you knew he didn't give two monkeys, and didn't really sort of put that much effort in terms of making it sort of like a shock horror accident either. It's just a great performance from John Normington, and yeah, he just sold it so well as Morgus. I've got to talk about Sharis Jek, the wonderful character of Sharis Jek. Again, played amazingly by Christopher Gable. Again, probably one of the top sort of one-off appearances in Doctor Who, the sort of tournament that I did last year on the Timey Wimey Review Facebook page. He was, you know, if I had to pick a personal favourite, he is definitely one of them as Sharis Jek. Again, so unhinged. You know, the costume is very limiting. As that's kind of Phantom of the Opera style sort of costume, you know. Yeah, you could sort of joke it's a little bit gimpified with the sort of full on leather and things, but you throw that away as soon as you hear Christopher's performance as Sharis Jek and the level of psychoticness of what is going on through this sort of tortured soul. You start from like, yeah, he's a terrifying evil person, the way that he captures the Doctor and Perry, and sort of and how he treats them both differently. You know, Perry, obviously the young beautiful one, and that unhealthy obsession of the beauty, and the hidden violence of the way that he's sort of like touching her hair, and sort of, you know, just very creepy elements to it, drugging her as well, and sort of like, I'm sorry I had to do that, you know, but sort of juxtaposition of how he treats the Doctor, you know, slapping him across the face with his glove, which, fun fact, was actually happened. You know, he didn't mean to strike Peter Davison that hard, but to sort of like got into character and actually struck him. So what you saw on camera was an actual, not a fake slap, it was full on. But yeah, just the whole sort of, and then when you hear, you know, when he starts talking about Morgus and how he traited him and left him to die from the mudburst, and that's how he got disfigured. Yeah, it's, you know, there is so many levels to this character, to the point that towards the end of the story where there was a fight between him and I've forgotten Challeck. That's it, Challeck. And he rips off Charlie rips off Jack's mask, and that scene where Perry screams when she sees the real face of Cyrus Jack, and he just crawls under the table and cries, like a frightened child. Honestly, some powerful stuff going on here. Really, really good. No one phoned in a performance, but the high on that totem pole is Christopher Gable as Cyrus Jack. There was some names thrown about there of who they were trying to get, like Tim Curry and David Bowie, and as much as they would have been very interesting in a big what if, you can't take anything away from Christopher Gable's performance here. Then we have Robert Glenister as Salatine, and he had a pretty difficult job to do in Caves of Androzani as playing two versions of Salatine. You got the human version and the android replica created by Cyrus Jack. And yeah, again, the two versions are fun to watch, and he is definitely Robert Glenister was fun to watch. I love the sort of mind behind the android, and again it plays well with sort of Graham Harper's direction. I love this shots when he's the android. Shalek was kind of revealing the plans or asking him to do something, and there's that weird sort of looking back, like really starry-eyed and going, "Oh, yes sir, yes, of course I'll do that." I love that with the little incidental music of the wow, that proper sci-fi 70s 80s music as well. You could probably look at it, it looks probably a bit cheesy now, but I again, it just, for me, in watching it and watching it recently, it still looks creepy, it still looks brilliant. And yeah, just the whole, yeah, the two characters that he performed, yeah, he did a great job with. It's not an easy one to do, and easy one to sell, but I felt, yeah, it might have been a bit cheesy in some areas, but I just loved it. Martin Cocaine as Chelik, the sort of leader of the military group run by Morgus to stop Cyrus Jack with the androids and the whole sort of gun running and all that kind of mess. Yeah, it was a good sort of military leader, but again, a person who was stuck in a rock and a hard place, and you just saw that in that performance as well. This was a guy that was just you just tell that he was not going to win in whatever sort of situation he was going to be in. He was very much duty bound, and I like the conversation that he had with the Doctor when they first captured the Doctor and Perry, and this whole sort of like, you will address me as sir, and the Doctor just being cheeky with him, but in a sort of more angrier way, because Chalik was ordered to basically execute the Doctor without a fair trial. And I love the line of, even in war, the innocent die too. There's basically, the Doctor and Perry just stumble across this haphazardly, and yeah, they paid for it in their lives in this story, particularly that moment when they was going to get executed for literally no reason, but basically being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But yeah, this military figure in Chalik, yeah, it was good. Then we have the sort of gun running soldiers, sort of freelance soldiers, with Maurice Rose as Stotts and Roy Holder as Krelper, and you could tell with these two who was the leader, who was the person in charge, and who was the fodder, who was the fall guy, in definitely Krelper. I love the scene between the two, when Krelper was basically trying to be the big man, and Stotzi soon put him right on, right down to the ground on that one, and put him straight back in his place. I love the scene with the two fighting over sort of like a rock cliff edge, and he and Stotts had this like red pill, which is kind of like, I'm assuming, like a cyanide capsule, and he forces it into his mouth, and I love like the sort of sound echoing of Stotts shouting for Krelper to bite and chew and kill yourself. Obviously, didn't how Krelper didn't wet his pants on that one, I have no idea. But yeah, that was, again, great performances from the two. But Maurice Rose as Stotts, again, these were all so rich characters coming out of the page, and whether that's part of Robert Holmes' writing or just the material that they all latched onto and just really gave it their all. Yeah, just sort of added extra elements on there. Stotts was a person that was not to be trusted. The sort of the standoff scene between him and the Fifth Doctor in the spaceship is just, again, great performances. Um, it's such a great story. There's just no way of describing it, really. But yeah, obviously the point is, all of these performances, including the sort of more minor parts such as the president and Morgis's personal secretary Timmins, um, although very minor roles, gave important roles as well, memorable roles. They all had a part to play. So let's talk about our main characters, starting off with Nicola Bryant as Companion Perry, and this is only her second story after debuting in the previous story, Planet of Fire. And wow, what a story to throw in a brand new companion to, I know obviously Big Finish Audio's kind of sort of expanded that the Fifth Doctor and Perry have been together for quite some time, but sort of going for the televisual scope of the tenure of the Fifth Doctor and Perry, yeah, not so much. It's pretty much into this next adventure. So there's still that element of getting to know each other. But yeah, for me, Nicola, this is probably one of Nicola Bryant's strongest performances. Again, she had a lot to do, being this frightened young companion who is slowly dying from spectrox toxemia. But the way that she carried this very vulnerable and very frightened companion, especially against Cyrus Jack, is, like I said, it makes, for me, definitely one of the most powerful and top performances from Nicola Bryant. And I hope Nicola kind of enjoyed that acting side of it. I know in the story she got a horrendous frostbite from the lack of clothing that she had for this story. A lot more though from what I say from the previous story, Planet of Fire. And it kind of, again, it's a shame that that's kind of how she was a little bit viewed and objectified. In part by John Nathan Turner, though this is going to be a companion that's going to be in bikinis and leotards from an interview, sort of one for the dads type of thing. And yeah, you can agree or disagree on that one. I think it's just a different time. Let's put it like that. But I'm glad that Nicola Bryant at least managed to show some very young but very powerful acting chops in this story. And finally, last but not least, Peter Davison in his swan song. And what a swan song for the Fifth Doctor. And it just, again, he raised the bar as well, whether that's to do with, obviously, this is his final story. He has said, in plenty of interviews, this was his favourite story out of his tenure as the Fifth Doctor. And if there was more of these types of stories, he probably would have stayed on for another season. But alas, he decided to go. And yeah, what a fitting way for the Fifth Doctor. And it just, whether this was by design or just more happy accident from Robert Holmes, the fact that I feel that this Doctor is a very vulnerable Doctor. He always tries his best, but kind of fails at the same time. And you got this pretty much more so in this story. This is just a full-on fight for survival in every turn he goes. Whether he's been captured by the military, whether he's been held up to be a forever companion for Cyrus Jack, whether he's been kidnapped to be taken to Androzani Major, whether he's crash landing a spaceship and trying to escape from the gun runners and the mud bursts, to even trying to get the antidote for the spectrox toxemia by going into the caves, which are hundreds of feet deep with very little oxygen, to basically, because he owes it to Perry. That's all what's going on in his mind. As soon as they're in danger was, I've got to save Perry. I've got to get Perry out of this. It was his mess. He's got to clean it up, despite whatever's going on around him. And yeah, this was just such a great performance from Peter Davison. And yeah, just the style of it was just slightly different to what we've not seen with the Doctor before, with the explaining the stick of celery, why he has that. And straight away when Perry asks, he replies, "Does it offend you?" Little bits like that was brilliant. And the again, the interactions with Cyrus Jack, where Cyrus Jack was basically perving over Perry, and he sort of like pops his face up with a sort of smiley grin. He's like, "Oh yes, and I'll have the intellect of you as well as the beauty. Fine," just to sort of in a sort of subtle way of like, keep your hands off her. I liked all of that, and just the heroic heroism from the Doctor, carrying Perry into the TARDIS when he was dying himself is just a great visual treat. The whole regeneration scene is just so good. You can see why this is like Peter Davison's favorite story, and this is definitely in large thanks to Graham Harper's visionary directing, very different to what we've seen in classic Doctor Who at that point. Where traditionally at that point it was basically the director sits in the box on the big stages and just pass down notes to the production floor manager. Here Graham was on the floor, he was with the actors, and he was wafting all the smoke and just getting every shot as perfect as he possibly could, with the time and the budget that they had. And I think that really did help the cast, all the cast, and just really, if anything, just brought that extra sort of enthusiasm for this story. Everyone was on board. No one took the mick out of this. They was here to enjoy performance and to work, and you saw that on screen thanks to Graham Harper. And there was some great sort of directional shots as well in this story. The sort of like the foreground, background sort of shots between the Fifth Doctor and Cyrus Jack. Some of the shots that probably didn't quite work as well as he probably wanted to, like Chalik sort of leaning in front whilst the Doctor was talking from behind, which is again sort of maybe a bit of a TV no-no, I don't know. The aforementioned breaking the fourth wall is a little bit controversial in terms of television no-nos, but at least he tried, and it was something different and something new for Doctor Who, and you can see why he's been, I would say, one of the greatest television directors out there. And the fact that he came back the following year for Revelation of the Daleks, again a well directed story, and of course coming back for modern Doctor Who, when he was directing Stolen Earth. Long may he reign. I would love to meet Graham Harper one day and shake him by the hand, because yeah, there was some amazing directional shots here, and yeah, just from a sort of visual standpoint, it just makes this a great story. My favorite shot out of the lot was the sort of final scenes with the battle and the fight between Morgus and Cyrus Jack. So Cyrus Jack kills Morgus. Spoiler alert, sorry. Kills Morgus whilst Stott starts shooting Cyrus Jack. But then you just see from behind, as if sort of sliding on some kind of like sort of trolley or something, is the android Salatine, and just shoots Stotzi in the back. It was just great drama, great violent drama, but yeah, all fitting well in this horrible world that is Androzani Minor. I'd say the one nitpick from this story, me personally, was the big monster bat thing that was in this story. I don't think it was needed at all. I think it was a bit of an ambition too far to create that kind of monster. If they went back and redid it, I would have gone down the sort of Jaws approach, or the Wampa in the original version of Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. Less is more. You know, we could have had just little moments of like the big claw, or sort of like the roar of this bat. I would have kept the shot where the Doctor sees this bat dead on the ground, you know, because that just sort of add to the theme of this story. But yeah, I wouldn't have included the bat sort of wandering around. It just kind of takes you out a little bit in this story, and definitely not needed in my opinion. You can also argue that some of the directional shots just didn't quite work, you know, and some might find it a bit cheesy looking, or just a little bit out of place. But for me personally, at least they tried, you know. I'd rather give full on credit for effort, whether it works or not. So I'm going to give the Caves of Androzani a TARDIS rating of 9 out of 10. Yes, I wasn't a big fan of the bat-like monster. I think that just sort of nudges it down a little bit for me. And some of the directional shots, you might find it a bit questionable now through modern viewership audiences. But for me, I loved it. And this story has got so much going on for it. So much to go for it. Brilliant writing by Robert Holmes. Like I said earlier, this is just unquestionably the most mean-spirited Doctor Who story going, and I absolutely loved it. It worked perfectly for the Fifth Doctor. A final and fitting swan song for Peter Davison. Brilliant casting as well. Brilliant performances from everyone. No one put in a bad performance on this. Brilliant cliffhangers, which I haven't really mentioned. Started off with the first part 1 cliffhanger with the execution under the red cloth. Yeah, you know, the Doctor and Perry's gonna get out of it, but how? That was fine. Obviously, part 2 to part 3, probably the weakest cliffhanger out of the stories, with the bat-like creature, as I already mentioned. But bloomin' heck, the cliffhanger for part 3 into part 4 with the Doctor crashing the ship, and no one's going to stop him because he needs to get down back to Androzani Minor to rescue his friend Perry. Stotzi pleading not for the Doctor not to do this, but nothing's going to stop me now. Love that. I've mentioned it before in my best and worst cliffhanger videos. Do check them out on the Timey Wimey Review YouTube channel. But that cliffhanger for part 3 into part 4, I dare anyone not to watch that cliffhanger and immediately not want to go and watch part 4. It is probably my favourite cliffhanger, in my opinion. I'm sure this was mentioned by one of my fellow Whovians here on the channel, but I'm pretty sure that shot just before the Doctor was crash landing, where it looks like he was going to regenerate, but sort of holds it back because he knows he has to go and rescue his friend Perry. Great visual effects as well, which I haven't really mentioned on this review. There's some great moments here. The spaceship model work was not the greatest I've seen on Classic Who, but it served a purpose. Very short and sweet. Visually, it's more the sort of directional shots that Graham Harper did, particularly that moment where Morgus and Chalik are having that conversation, and Morgus goes behind the view screen when he's talking to Chalik. I thought there was some great Doctor Who visual effects here, showcasing that for the classic era of Doctor Who. Brilliant incidental scoring by Roger Lim as well. Again, one of my favourites. Particularly the regeneration scene as well. Very haunting music going on there, but again, the incidental music was solid throughout. Like I said, this story's got so much going for it. Is it my favourite classic Who story of all time? You know, it's between this and Genesis of the Daleks. And for me, I'm probably going to say Genesis of the Daleks just edges it out. Probably just from its sort of history and nostalgic standpoint in my eyes, but nothing against Caves of Androzani, because again, it's a solid story, and if it's your favorite, I do not blame you, and I can see why it topped the polls of greatest stories or Doctor Who stories of all time a few years ago. If you haven't seen it, do check it out. I highly recommend it. You can watch it on DVD. There's quite a few streaming services that will have this classic story on there, such as Tubi, Tubi, BritBox, and BBC iPlayer. Do check it out. Again, I highly recommend it. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts to The Caves of Androzani. Is this your favourite classic Doctor Who story ever? And if it is, I don't blame you. Is it your favourite Fifth Doctor story or favourite story written by Robert Holmes? Let me know in the comments. Where would you rank this story amongst all the other classic or even modern Doctor Who stories? Like I said, this story did top the polls some years ago, and I can certainly see why. But I would love to know your thoughts and favourite or least favourite moments from this story. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really do hope you enjoyed this review. If you have, please like, share and subscribe. Hit the cloister bell for more notifications. Come say hello and follow me on Facebook and X. And do check out my other fantastic Doctor Who related content on the Timey Wimey Review TikTok page and right here on the Timey Wimey Review YouTube channel. And as the good doctor once said, curiosity has always been my downfall.